2018 meeting of the Alarm Systems Contractors Board. Ms. Vest, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Scott Cockcroft.
Here.
Lou Richard.
Here.
Vivian Hickson.
Here.
Doug Fraker.
Here.
Keith Harvey.
Here.
Let the record show you have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Have the members had an opportunity to review the agenda for today's meeting, and if so, a motion to adopt?
Make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Harvey, a second by Mr. Cockcroft to adopt the agenda as presented. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The agenda is adopted. Next are the minutes from the October 18, 2018 board meeting. Have members had an opportunity to review those minutes? Motion to approve is presented.
Second.
Motion to, there's a motion, second?
Go ahead and make your motion, Keith.
I didn't hear a motion.
Scott assumed that you were going to, so he seconded it before
You
you.
made the motion. I thought.
Make a
Did you
motion
make a
to,
Oh, you just said.
to accept the minutes as they've been presented from the last board meeting.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Harvey, a second by Mr. Cockcroft to approve the minutes as presented. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The minutes are approved. Mr. Huffman, are you ready for the legal report?
I believe I am, yes. Number one is 2018065-141. It's an anonymous complaint alleging respondent is committing unlicensed bidding, installing, selling alarm systems in numerous school districts. The same allegations were handled in April of 2018 against respondent, wherein respondent possessed a valid low voltage license and was assured they were adequately licensed since the school districts were self-monitoring. Since April of 2018, respondent has obtained the appropriate ASC license and has an employee that is a licensed QA. Recommendation is to close.
Follow up to the original complaint, or was this another complaint?
This was an additional complaint that we handled back in April, but it was the same facts.
They were not licensed at the time, but are now.
Well, they had that low voltage, and they contacted the department and were assured that they were adequately licensed, and then they weren't. But then after we told them what had happened, they got the correct license.
Motion to concur with council.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Harvey, a second by Mr. Cockcroft to concur with our council's recommendation. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay.
No, I said aye.
Okay.
Sorry.
Number two, 2018067-091. Complainant alleges that lightning damaged their security system, and they have been billed for a system that cannot be monitored. Complainant alleges they have requested cancellation numerous times. Respondent denies the allegations and states the system is being monitored, and they only received one cancellation request on August 27, 2018. Respondent sent complainant a cancellation letter, and it was returned on August 29, 2018. Per policy, the account cancels after 30 days. The account remains active for the 30 days and continues to bill, and normally the customer would be liable for the remaining balance. However, respondent has agreed to waive the outstanding balance and cancel the contract without further obligation of the complainant. Recommendation is to close.
I make a motion to agree with the recommendations of our council and to close. Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Cockcroft, a second by Mr. Richard to concur with our council's recommendation in this matter. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Number 3, 2018-069-581. Complainant alleges the respondent's yard sign does not properly reflect the company license number. Respondent's yard sign includes all state licenses and required information on the back of the yard sign. Recommendation is to close.
Make a motion to concur with the recommendation of our council to close.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Calcraft, a second by Mr. Harvey to concur with our council's recommendation to close. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Number 4, 2018-066-321. Complainant alleges that respondent opened a branch office without a license or QA for that location. Respondent has a main office in another city and opened a branch office for expansion. Respondent has a proper license and licensed QA for its main office. Respondent consulted the department and learned that it must have a licensed QA for each office it maintains. Respondent immediately designated, registered, and paid for the QA licensure for its branch office and apologized for not interpreting the statute correctly. Recommendation is a letter of warning.
Make a motion, we concur with council's recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Harvey. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second by Mr. Calcraft. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Mr. Hoffman, can I interrupt you for a moment, please? Our Assistant Commissioner, Carter Lawrence, has come in, and I know he has a very, very busy schedule today. If it's all right with everyone, I would like to have him come up now with his presentation.
Do you want your donut back?
I'll try not to eat it.
I was going to say, she that was
Right. Oh, good morning and a early Merry Christmas to all of you. It's good to see you. I had asked Cody if I could come down and talk with y'all about something that came to my attention, and had Cody do a little bit of research. Cody and Ashley relates to Lookout Portable Security Systems. A name that might be familiar to some of you is a entity various times in the past appeared before the board seeking clarification as to whether or not they need to be licensed. And after the board's recent decision in the Adam Jackson Edge AI decision, Lookout Portable reached back out seeking again clarification as to whether they needed to be licensed. So what I wanted to do was ultimately get you to reconsider Lookout Portable in light of Edge AI, but to maybe first talk through the timeline about how Lookout Portable has appeared before the board going back to September of 2000. And if at any point any of this is confusing, because it definitely was for me, just stop and either Cody or Ashley can give some clarification.
Sorry, Carter, I don't mean to cut you off. I believe that somebody on Cody's staff is actually getting some copies of that so that you all can follow along.
So in the meantime, you can just interrupt if there is anything that is confusing. So in September of 2000, at an alarm board meeting, a determination was made that the system was portable but had more than a signal function, that the wireless contacts for doors and windows, the wireless smoke detector sent a signal, that this system met all requirements of an alarm system, and anyone selling the system should hold a license. So at that point in September of 2000, the alarm board determined that Lookout Portable should be licensed. This was confirmed at the subsequent meeting in November, in which the board again said that a license was required. Now, fast forward to August of 2006, and the board had its first change in its opinion regarding the approach to Lookout Portable. So going down to the relevant part of the minutes here, board members determined that this specific product would not be considered an alarm and would not fall under the definition of alarm system. So again, that was 2006, 6 years after first making the determination.
Was that second opinion including the door contacts and smoke detectors, all of the other parts that made it an alarm from the first decision? Or were they just looking at the portable holdup?
I don't offhand. I can just recall what system came to them this last appearance.
Cody just said that Lookout Portable came in and presented about their business and would have presumably have fully explained how they operated, same as they would have explained
That was
in
the,
2000.
I was here for that. That was a third time, right? I'm just curious. I wasn't here for the 2006 when it was approved, or was said that it wasn't an alarm, but it could have been presented vastly different at that time.
That's correct, but Mr. Mahaffey, he's the one who did come in. If I got his name.
So picking back up in December of 2015, there was another change in which a determination was made that the alarm licensing would be required for Lookout Portable security systems. Came after there had been a complaint filed against Lookout Portable, and then again ultimately changed back to requiring licensure. 2006, April 2016, there was again an appearance of Lookout Portable before the board, and the recommendation from legal was to close as there was no violation found, but the board decision was to keep the complaint open so the respondent could appear at the next board meeting in June of 2016. And board members asked to see a copy of bid or sales contract, and that's on the second page of the documents that Cody just passed out to you. So then what's really relevant for us, the final time that Mr. Mahaffey of Lookout Portable Security Systems appeared before the board was in June of 2016, and once again there was a change in which the board said that it should become a licensed entity. So seeing that the board has taken different positions throughout the years, and to your point, it's possible that there were different elements of his business that he emphasized at different instances, but it's our understanding that he did not misrepresent himself, and that in light of Edge AI decision that you made in the determination there, that I would ask that you make the same determination for Mr. Mahaffey of Lookout Portable as well. So I wanted to stop there and maybe see we have a question.
Personally, I feel they're very different in that one was something that was CCTV. It was his, and of course I didn't agree. I didn't agree that Edge AI should have been excluded, but his was different in that it was something added on to an existing closed-circuit television system, which does require licensure, whereas this particular system is an alarm system. I mean, it's not an add-on. It's not like a software add-on to an existing alarm system. It is an alarm system all on its own. And he has described it different ways. That's been even represented to us. I was only here for one of them, but there was testimony to what was brought forth in prior times. And when he brings it forth as just basically in an ammo box, it's a little portable unit he sits down and plugs in, that's a portable system. But then he also goes on at times to testify that it's, it has wiring to it, that they can add devices to it. He presents it differently, to my recollection, and he might want to get it approved as the portable and then add all the other stuff on. And if he didn't have some question, why does he keep coming back with it? I guess it was brought up. Someone
I understand
reported it as
there
a
were additional
violation.
complaints filed
Yeah.
about it, and that's why he came back in front of the board. And then obviously after it was found that he did have to be licensed, I think he sought to come forward again, maybe to talk about how in the past it was determined that he did not need licensure. So I think that's why he was in front of the board on numerous occasions.
Because it's, of course, I don't know what I'm supposed to reflect on as far as that, but what I remember, he brought in an alarm panel. I mean, it's a panel that an alarm company would mount on a wall, but he put a handle on top to carry it around. I mean, he literally screwed like a luggage suitcase handle to the top of it to say it was portable. So does that mean that an alarm company, if they could put a handle on the top of an alarm panel and it's wireless and not have to be licensed? I think we're on a slippery slope there if somebody can put a handle on something and call it portable. Because a lot of wireless alarm systems these days, you could nearly call them portable. You could, if that's the definition, that you can just plug it in and then all the other sensors, because there are installation aspects of all the other wireless sensors, and he can present it one way as a box that he can ship out and a wireless button that he can ship out, and he never has to go on site, and he didn't even have it near in our state, so he doesn't have to be licensed. But that's not what he presented it as. He presents it that he is going to sell it, he is going to go on site, he is going to, do testing and installation. Just the fact that he comes into the state to sell it is a violation of,
Excuse me.
in my opinion.
I don't think we have all the file. Ours stops in mid-sentence on case number 7. And that is,
I think this is the only part that I filed.
So the part that says page 7 is where we pulled the prior complaint for Lookout, so it wouldn't be the entire legal report. That's the legal report from 2004.
is this page, whatever we've got here, is this one that's got 7 at the bottom, is that actually the last page of the handout?
Yes,
Okay.
because if you look at the page before that, at the very top, it says page 7. The summary of that complaint is at the bottom of that page,
In the top of the next page.
at the top of the next page.
So if that's 2004, then what you and Cody provided doesn't have a 2004 date on it.
And I think what Cody prepared was a timeline of their appearances versus when the complaints came in. Because, of course, complaints are presented anonymously, and the board would make a decision not knowing that was Lookout portable. But once the board would make a decision, Cody, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mahaffey would then say, well, our prior decision, the board told us we didn't need a license. And so at that point, that's when we brought him in before the board to present the system to you all.
We have 2 new board members. I think Scott may be the only one that actually recalls this presentation. I personally don't.
Kind of fuzzy to me.
I don't have a clue, honestly, what he was presenting to us for us to make a determination. I'm lost, and I know these 2 guys are, because we don't have a clue what you're talking about. So we need some further background.
Okay.
Is he, and another thing, Carter, is he asking to come back before the board, or is he wanting the board to vote again? I'm not sure really what's going on.
He reached out to Beacon and said that he was aware of Edge AI, had followed that, and it seemed to him that he would fall into the same category broadly as did Mr. Jackson. And he said that he wants to be licensed. I did not want to reach out to ask him to come up from Georgia, which I understand is where he lives, to come here, if this was something that the board could easily decide. And the board might have a different determination than me, but as I talked about this with Cody and looked over the facts, there were a lot of similarities to Mr. Jackson. So from what you talked about as maybe some differences in what was emphasized in Mr. Mahaffey's testimony to you, that rings true about Mr. Jackson as well, that there were different elements that he considered. But obviously, ultimately, the board decided that he did not have to be licensed an alarm.
Right.
I'm sorry, I stepped in on you there.
No, I'm just agreeing with you on. I don't see the similarities necessarily. Where do you draw the similarities between the 2?
Cody, could you maybe speak to that?
What does Lookout Security do? I mean,
They're the ones that, it's just like with Edge AI, where it started, I believe, was Anderson School System. They were putting this.
And that's probably the only similarity I see, is they both were going to be one was being installed in a courthouse when it was presented to us.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I guess they could also put it in a school system. It could have similar uses.
Are they putting a full alarm system in? Are they putting in CCTV? What type of system?
Actually, it's the same as just going to the store and picking it off the shelf, putting it in the box, similar to what
Are
we
they
were talking
putting in an
about.
alarm system? Are they putting in CCTV or what?
Cody, if I'm not mistaken, is this not the panic alarm company? They were installing panic buttons at the school system and maybe the courthouse at one point in Anderson County.
But they're physically doing the install. It's not
Well,
my
I believe
company
the last-
buying a product.
I believe the last time he appeared, he said that he provided the system, as Scott described it, he provided it to the courthouse, and they could sit it wherever they needed to sit it. And in the event of an emergency, they would push the panic button. And did it alert the police or not? I can't recall.
It was also their own maintenance people that were doing.
When it was in the courthouse,
put
it
it in
just
there.
notified the security there in the courthouse. It wasn't remotely monitored. And
It didn't
they
go
were
out of the
just-
building. It just stayed right there in the courthouse.
Right, and what they presented at that time was a box that they could ship in and be plugged into an electrical outlet, plugged into, I don't know if it just beeped their wireless buttons. There wasn't an install to that, but then they did explain more that went beyond that as far as all the other components.
I think to Carter's point, as far as the similarities, I think to Edge AI, I believe part of Mr. Jackson's testimony was that it did not alert outside authorities. His system did not, so it's similar in that way.
I'm not mistaken, it had the radios, they were communicating between each other and was saying they were communicating in the
Right.
It's all in the,
And honestly,
Courthouse
I
or at the
never
school.
really understood Edge AI's inference or suggestion that it wasn't monitored remotely, because if you take that as the similarity, an alarm company could install local alarms without being licensed. That doesn't make sense to me, because I know that there have been companies that have been brought forward that might have been installing an alarm in a new home, and they didn't do monitoring at all, maybe an electrical contractor. And they were, deemed as not being licensed and in violation of the law. So the fact that it's not remotely monitored that has nothing in my mind to do with the definition of alarm system. That has to do with the definition of whether they needed to be licensed as a monitoring company, but they'd still need to be licensed as an alarm system contractor, in my opinion, to install the alarm, even if it just makes a noise inside the premises. That, by the definition of the law, and it keeps getting brought back to us. I want us to look at it differently. I wish the legislator would change it. If they want us to do different, change the legislation and bring it back to us. Don't ask us to interpret something differently than what the legislation says.
So in this instance, I would not be trying to get you to interpret it differently, but to interpret in light of what you just did with Edge AI and Mr. Jackson.
Well, I would disagree with that, and I mean I understand that's what you're asking, but I would, my opinion would be that it is not similar to that it would still require a license, but there's 4 other board members, so.
The AGI, or whatever their name was, they developed a software. I don't know if it's legal, but I'm looking at the customer's website right now. He's developed a product, or he's bought everybody else's product. He hadn't developed anything. Put it in a portable box, calling it a portable system. Call him for sales. So, to me, if he's just sending it, yeah, now you get that slippery slope of the DIY stuff we're all going to be facing. But if he's wanting to come into the state and install, then yes, he's got to be licensed.
I believe the difference, what happened before was there was a bid put out, and it required installation, and he wanted us to say that he could install it since it was portable. And I think that was part of the issue. I mean, if he does sell it from Georgia, and he never sets foot in the state, and he doesn't do any installation, I think he's okay. I mean, he could sell alarm parts for that matter.
There'd be no difference between that and Ring, Arlo, any of those products that I could go to Target and purchase and put in myself, correct?
Right, and Ring is a licensed alarm contractor.
Okay, so maybe not the best
Exclude
example,
that
but any of the
I think
numerous,
that's a good example.
any of the numerous systems that I could just go and purchase and put in myself.
Right.
But he
Now,
just packaged them up
difference,
himself.
the one difference is, you could install that in your home, yes. That's the way the law is written. Now, if you owned a business that's open to the public, you couldn't do that. I mean, as far as life safety things, and I see we have something on the agenda today that we get to discuss that further. But the law says that if the business can install, their own alarm system, camera system, all that, but it says if it's open to the public, that they can't. Now, I guess we'll get to deal with that later on today, but.
And I would note that wouldn't impact the board's determination about Lookout Portable. He would presumably give the appropriate notice to his customers as to complying with their local laws, but it would not be incumbent upon him to make sure that the business was properly following the law.
But most of what's been presented to us, if I remember correctly, he's had bids from government agencies that required installation, and that's what they require, because a government entity most of the time isn't going to want to buy something in a box. They want it installed, and they want the whole thing taken care of from them. They want it turnkey, and that's the problem when he starts selling it and sets foot in the state and starts installing it. I believe that's where the issue came.
So would the board feel comfortable then clarifying that if he is simply doing sales and he has not come in to install, then he would not need a license? Is that something that
I believe the definition says sales.
He can't come to the state. I can't go to the courthouse and walk it and make a quote and come back and then send it to you. Now, if I pick up the phone or go on the internet and order it, that's different, because you can be anywhere. But if you're coming here, surveying the building, advising on what you need, then yes, you need to be licensed.
If he's marketing
Or if he's
to Tennessee,
servicing it too,
Or if he's
even after
servicing
the.
after the sale.
The installation and the service, he's got to be licensed.
I'd like to say one thing about the AJI. They were selling a software that was an add-on that would fit any other brand of CCTV equipment. When they first presented that to us, they also added that in addition to the software, they would be selling other devices and setting them up and installing them and focusing and making them work with their software. When they said all of that, it fell under our rules and
He
regulations.
also said he wanted to be on site and make recommendation as to.
But when they last presented it, they changed that presentation and said they no longer would be providing those ancillary devices, and it would just be selling software. It changed completely at that point.
Right, and in light of that, that's why ultimately you, the board, was able to make the determination that, given that set of facts, that EDGI did not need to be licensed because it did not meet the definition. So I would think that it would be appropriate here for you to say, given a similar set of circumstances, that not need to be licensed. If he is selling his device from a different state, with all of the caveats that you, the board members, have put on, basically, I understand that Mr. Mahaffey is looking for some clarity as to whether he is allowed to sell these units in the state of Tennessee again. And I think it would be a great gesture from you, the board, to clarify that, yes, you can sell under those circumstances.
I think no disrespect whatsoever, but I think if the man would pick up our code book, that first line that says, what is an alarm system, it is very clear.
I know in 2016, when he was here last, we gave him a lot of clarity, and he didn't like our answer, I guess, and you're saying that maybe there's some difference now, but personally, I don't see the difference because of the Edge AI ruling. That's my opinion. But
in understanding that, I would think, because of the number of times that he appeared and the changes that he heard from the board, that a final definitive answer from you, because yes, he could pick up the code book and go through, but he's also been in front and seen at least 3 different changes in the way that the board dealt with him. And yes, I'll acknowledge that there were probably some different facts that were emphasized to varying degrees. But if you could give him some clarification that with this set of facts, this is the answer for you, that would be my request in order to
I would
help out
think he
Mr.
would
Mahaffey.
need to come in and present it again, because he's presented it different each time, so we would need to see what he's wanting approved at this point in time. Because I looked at the minutes from the other, I mean, we saw the, the original, what was presented prior, and it was definitely different than what he presented to us in 2016. So, I mean, he's presented it as a much more do-it-yourself, and he's presented it with, he was going to go install it. So
Sure.
I think we've answered that question. Of course, he can come back in and ask it again.
My request would be, rather than having him come up from Georgia and take time away from his
Right.
business, that you instead could set the parameters and say, if you're doing sales outside the state of Tennessee, circumstances, you do not meet the definition and you don't have to be licensed. So that would prevent him from having to come in, but that still lets you set the parameters. And that would be helpful, I think, not just for Mr. Mahaffey, but other people who might find themselves in a similar situation and prevent maybe a in the future. But that would be just you, the board, saying, in these circumstances, someone does not following these sets of rules.
Possible for him to submit to us his intent of how he wants to sell it in the state of Tennessee, and us make a ruling on whether that would be acceptable with or without a license?
I think he certainly could, but if you, the board, are saying that, from what you said earlier, if he's not in the state, he's not servicing, he's not coming on site to bid things out, you're saying that clearly does not require a license, that you could say, if he meets all of those circumstances, it does not need a license. And if Mr. Mahaffey does do one of those things that would require a license, that would obviously be actionable, where you, the board, would be able to pick that up in the future. I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm trying to make this easier on Mr. Mahaffey so that he's not having to keep coming back.
I understand that, but he's the one wanting a change. He's the one that's wanting clarification when we did give him that before. So I understand you're trying to save him, but save him some effort and time to come here. But he's the one looking for this. And if he didn't have clarity from the last time he was here, it's his prerogative to come back if he wants to. I mean, I guess we could make some sort of finding statement.
But the state law already covers this. If he orders it over the internet, am I correct? He doesn't need, or if he sells it over the internet. But that's not exactly what he's doing, because he's coming into Tennessee selling, installing, and so forth, which clearly makes him need to be licensed. And I agree with what Keith said. Read the code. It's very self-explanatory. And if he has a question, where's Lookout Security? Just across the line into Georgia?
Lookout. Presumably it's Lookout
No
Mountain.
further than
so
I
that
drive
makes
up
sense.
here. No further than Scott does. If this is that important to him, let him come up here and show us exactly what he wants and how it's changed from his last appearance.
He's based in Kennesaw, Georgia, according to his website.
Well, it's a little bit further than I drive, but not any further than Scott drives. So,
Of course, he's not a board member, though.
no, that's true. But if
And he's not getting his mileage reimbursed, et
But
cetera.
Well,
if
as
he's
of right-
wanting to do business in Tennessee, I don't understand. I'm like them. I don't understand why he keeps pursuing this. If he's doing ABC, yes, you need to be licensed. If you're doing DEF, then no, you don't.
It's my understanding that the reason he's been here so many times is because of complaints that have been decided differently by the board. So there have been times when a complaint's come up and the board said no license, other times when a complaint has come up and a license has been required.
And it was different each time what was presented that he was doing. So some of what and he should have clarity from those decisions of what he can and what he can't do. He just doesn't like them, is my opinion, but
Okay.
he's gotten some clarity from that. If it's completely, I mean, I think we outlined it for him. Even when if you're installing it, it's a problem. If you're coming into Tennessee to sell it, if he comes into the state to give a proposal or make a presentation to a city council or something, he's in violation. He's selling in the state. If he just ships any parts, he could ship the wireless door window sensors, smoke detectors, all that, because a distributor can ship and sell anywhere, anyone. When he when he comes into the state to install or to sell, I mean, he can sell from his website, but he can't, market to businesses actively calling and selling into the state of Tennessee. Ship him the stuff, but he can't install it and he can't sell it here.
So it certainly it looks like the board has decided you don't want to do the motion that I requested. And that's certainly your purview. It's possible that the discussion that you just had would give the clarity that Mr. Mahaffey was seeking. He also might want to appear before you in person. I think
I'm pretty
the ball
sure
in his
what I
court
just
and
said is
appointing
what we
that.
told him in 2016.
Oh.
And I don't want to speak for the whole board.
Well, is he wanting to do something different than what he was presenting to the board in 2016?
Not aware of that.
It's kind of hard. I don't feel comfortable making a motion to say that we're going to give him free rein to do whatever he wants to, and then he comes back and says, "Oh, but y'all made a motion that I could do this."
Well, I wasn't
And then
looking
he
for a
comes
motion for
back
free
and-
reign, just a motion
No, I
to
mean, but
clarify.
you don't know his interpretation if he's been here 3 times either.
Well, this would be your interpretation where you were setting the parameters.
But he keeps interpreting things differently, that he keeps coming back. And I don't feel comfortable passing any motion without him speaking to me directly or this board directly saying, I need clarity on A, B, C, and D. And then we say, okay, here's what you can and can't do.
And if we feel like, if here again, if the legislator feels the legislation it needs to be changed because the legislator feels that the licensing is too onerous or too, because it's not, in my opinion, it's a small company can get licensed. My business is a 4-person company. And Edge AI, I think, was a 4-person company. It's not like the licensing is something horrendous that a company couldn't achieve. If it is, if that's what the state feels now, they should change the law. I mean, and maybe it's time to review some of the CCTV. There's too many people installing CCTV that are unlicensed at this point. I don't think that the office for the board can even, police that or keep up with that very well. But nonetheless, we're dealt with what the legislation is. I personally think it probably does need to change, but.
Well, I can understand and appreciate your desire to enforce the law as provided to you and to not change the law. I was just looking for clarification for Mr. Mahaffey, and I totally understand. It's understandable, everything that you've said. I think we'll just see what Mr. Mahaffey, how he wants to proceed here. And I think if he were to watch this proceeding, it would be clear to him that he would be welcome to come back in front of you.
Oh, absolutely, if something's changed. We don't ever deny anybody an appearance before us. We listen to them completely, but
He could also very easily get licensed and probably pay for it with one job. Why is it so hard to get licensed? Why is that such a big obstacle for folks?
Is that rhetorical or?
No, that was a serious question. I mean, why is that such a big problem for him to get licensed?
So you did note about the monetary cost, and that it's not just a one-time, but there's ongoing. There are obligations that go with
Can
that.
I petition for my company not to be licensed because it costs me money?
If you fell outside of the statutory scheme.
Well, if I start putting a handle on my alarm boxes, can I do that?
And if you did not install them personally, all of these things that we
Right.
talked about earlier.
See,
where you
you're
fall outside.
answering your own questions right there. You just said why he can't do it. You just answered it.
My only comment in closing this up is I don't see that the change in the decision with AJI has any bearing on his case. I think it's apples and monkeys. I mean, I just think it's not even in the same ballpark.
Monkeys, that is a novel one that I'm going to have to read.
Not even apples and oranges.
Clever turn of phrase there. Okay, well, thank you very much. It was good seeing all of you. Merry early Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank you, you too.
All right, thank you.
I did not get your donut.
Yeah, there's more donuts.
Thank you. I appreciate us postponing the legal report to. I have a question. Is this the same gentleman that came in and had it in a box
Yeah,
and had the radios?
Handheld radio.
So you're telling me that's an alarm system? He sold it, and he brought it into the school.
He's
So
bringing
here
it into
is. He
Tennessee,
sits it
selling
down.
it.
He sold it from Georgia. So he brings it here, gives it to the school.
There's the mistake. He can't bring it here.
He's bringing it into
Put it
Tennessee,
in the big
selling
brown
it.
truck and it's fine. Don't you dare carry it in here. There's,
Come on now, that didn't even make sense. You
Well,
mean I
go
can put
read
it
the
in-
law if
I
it
can
doesn't
put it
make
in a
sense.
FedEx truck, but I can't put it in my car?
But the FedEx driver's not going to install it. But the guy,
He
but
didn't
you,
install it. He went to the CIS school and the
He
maintenance
sold it.
people, or whatever they call the people at the school system, I don't want to insult anybody, because all they had was the radio. I was just
He
trying
went to
to refresh
the
my memory,
school
'cause
and
I'll be
sold
in
it.
discussion again.
he showed them how to use it. He set it up for them. I guarantee you, he didn't just carry it in and say, now you take it out of the box.
And he was add devices. He would add motion detectors and door contacts and that type of thing to it.
and I understand what
We remember some of it, in other words, okay.
And I understand what
didn't
what you're seeing here. It seems like we're splitting hairs, but think of this: the next problem is that you've got companies that do. There's a lot of wireless systems that are installed now. Some of them are a desktop. The keypad sits on the kitchen counter and plugs in, and has wireless sensors. The next thing you're going to have, if you approve this, that's wireless, that he's taking it and plugging it in, is that you'll have companies that don't want to be licensed to install actual residential burglar alarms because they're going to say, well, I can just set it down and plug it in and stick the sensors up or hand the sensors to the customer.
But they'd be doing the monitoring too, wouldn't they? Or
Maybe not.
somebody
Just-
would
could
have to
just be the
do.
noise
But
maker.
what some of the dealer programs would say though is he'd say, oh, well, I'm not doing the monitoring, I'm just installing it, and the big central station is doing all the monitoring.
Well, I can see where this is going to be a question more and more in the future, because that's what the industry's going to, I think. So I think maybe or somebody needs
Well,
to
this
sit
is,
down
I
and
go
take
back
a
to
look at
the
the
guy
law.
from Lowe's that came in here. Lowe's wanted clarification if they need to be licensed or not. And the board told them as long as they sold the product off the shelf, no. But Lowe's was wanting to be involved in collecting the monitoring fee, which changed the whole scheme of things. And at that point, they would have to be. But, you just can't make a blanket statement that this, because you're creating so many cans of worms that other companies can come in and say, well, the board said this and this about this company. When what's Mahaffey wanting to do this time? What's changed from the last time? And you just can't say you do or you don't based on a vague description, is how I feel about it.
I think really what the problem was is that the board changed its mind several.
But did he change his set of circumstances?
I don't know. I just don't. I don't know that. I'm just saying.
It was presented
was-
at the last time what was presented on the prior two times, and he changed. What he presented each time was different.
I don't want him to come in here and you're going to say, no, now I've looked at everything, you don't need one. Then we get another might get a complaint. And
That's
if it's
gonna
not
happen
presented
if-
just like it's supposed to be presented, you'll say, yes, you need one. And that's what's happened. We've changed from one time to the other. But yes, I
think the first-
appreciate it.
If I remember
Okay.
correctly, the first time or two that he came in, he did not bring the product. He brought a cut sheet, and he explained it, and he did his best to say, this is how it's going to work. And I think that changed a couple of times. And then we finally said, hey, bring the thing in, let's see it. Let's see it work. And because it is a little different, because it did use the radios for communication, and the devices were just kind of an add-on, and it was a different animal than what we were used to seeing. So I think that's the reason for the change.
So if he asked me again, when I talked to Mr. McAfee, I would tell him, yes, he's more. But he would need to bring his product and you could make a final decision on it. So if we get should get complaints on him, we'll know just to close the complaint, because it's already been presented to the board.
I don't know
Final
that I would
decision.
say close the complaint, because you don't know if he's doing something different from
All
one time to
complaints
the
are going to come for you
next.
anyway. I didn't mean.
Yeah.
You could recommend.
I don't,
you close it.
right, I don't close them. I don't mean to give that impression. They all have to come before you. Okay, thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt your.
Oh, that's okay.
Stuart?
My turn again?
If you want to.
Thank you for patiently waiting.
No problem.
Okay.
Number 5, 2018-071-221. Complainant alleges she tried to cancel her service with respondent. Respondent's company is no longer in business. Respondent informed complainant that her account was sold to another company to continue to monitor. Complainant's main complaint is that the new company wants complainant to pay the remaining balance of that contract. Recommendation is to close. Basically, her complaint is more, it's not about this respondent, it's about another respondent.
Right, and it's a civil matter. I'd make a recommendation, or a motion to concur with the recommendation of our council.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Cockcroft and a second by Mr. Harvey to close this matter. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Number 6.
Number 6, 2018-069-451. Complainant alleges they contracted with respondent on August 8, 2018, and approved on August 14, 2018, to run conduit for power to the clubhouse media shelf, and the price was good for 30 days. Complainant alleges that respondent ordered the equipment and scheduled an installation date on September 17, 2018. Further, complainant alleges that respondent subsequently informed them that the bid amount was too low and the cost would be $1,000 more for the installation. Respondent gives a detailed response and admits that the original quote was incorrect, and they have offered to give a revised quote to the complainant before any money was exchanged or work performed. Respondent states that originally it was agreed to run the conduit without digging a trench and burying the cable. However, complainant would have liked it to be buried. Respondent stated to complainant that they would create a new estimate and add digging a trench, but complainant then declined due to the extra cost and time constraints. The co-owner of respondent met with complainant to make sure there was no confusion on installation day. At this meeting, it was determined that the cable was not correct in rating for this type of installation, the distance was much farther than anticipated, and conduit would need to be buried as to not result in a tripping hazard. Respondent apologized to complainant for the oversight on their part, admitting the original quote was incorrect, and offered to give a revised quote. Respondent states that complainant accused them of fraud, breach of contract, and deceptive business practices. Respondent denies the allegations and states that the schedule of protection had not been signed, no work had been performed, and no money was exchanged. Recommendation is to close.
Again, it sounds like a civil matter, but is there anything does relate to the statute as far as ethics or?
No, this is more of a civil matter. It's not really a contract dispute because the contract hadn't even been signed and no money was exchanged. It was more of, they said they could do it for this price, and then turns out that they couldn't because there was more involved.
Make the motion to concur with council.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Harvey, a second by Mr. Richard to concur with council to close this. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Number 7, 2018-071-141. Complainant alleges that respondent had a 30-day return policy if they were not happy with the alarm system. Complainant states they have a doggy door that keeps setting off the alarm and decided to return the system and cancel the contract. Complainant has returned the equipment to respondent. Respondent contracted with complainant on July 27, 2018. Respondent denies telling complainant there was a 30-day cancellation policy. Respondent states on August 8, 2018, outside the 3-day cancellation period, complainant called to cancel the contract due to the doggy door setting off the alarm. Respondent believes a valid contractual relationship was formed. However, in good faith, they have waived any cancellation fee and terminated the contract without further obligation to complainant. Recommendation is to close.
Make a motion to concur with the recommendations of our council.
Second. Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Cockcroft, a second by Mr. Fraker to concur with council. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Number 8, 2018-069-461. Complainant alleges he was quoted $1,650 to transfer the alarm service from one house to another. Complainant alleges he received a bill of over $2,000 even after his account was debited $667. Complainant alleges faulty equipment and respondent refuses to resolve the issue. Complainant further alleges that respondent is threatening discontinuing service and turning the account over to collections, claiming complainant is 120 days past due. Respondent states complainant contracted with them to relocate service on March 16, 2018 for $1,666. However, the increase in the cost to $2,003 was due to complainant electing to add equipment. Complainant agreed to pay the increased cost in 3 installments of $667.75. Respondent denies any allegation of overcharging complainant. Respondent further states they have made 2 site visits and replaced the equipment at no charge to complainant. In fact, complainant has received $620 in goodwill credits. Respondent also states that there remains a balance on the account, and if it is not paid, then service could be canceled pursuant to the contract. Complainant rebutted and stated that respondent has the wrong former address, did not receive the correct equipment, and respondent has made more than 2 site visits. Recommendation is this is a contract dispute. Close.
Absolutely agree with you. I'd make a motion that we concur with council's decision.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Harvey. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second by Mr. Fraker. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Number 9, 2018-070-401. Complainant alleges that she has been a customer with respondent since 2011. When she tried to cancel her service, she was quoted over $1,000. Complainant is 94. Respondent states that they contacted complainant and were advised that she did not file this complaint. Apparently, a salesperson for another company told complainant that respondent filed bankruptcy and tried to switch her alarm monitoring service. Complainant was unsure of the name of the salesperson or the company. Complainant is also unsure whether she signed any agreement. Complainant had no business card or paperwork from the salesperson. Complainant also stated she has no desire to cancel service with respondent. Recommendation is to close.
Who made the complaint? It just was made in error or against?
The respondent believes that the salesperson, who is unknown, made the complaint.
I make a motion to concur with the recommendation of our council to close.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Cockcroft, a second by Mr. Richard to concur with council to close this matter. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
We've already voted on that, but I assume we did contact the complainant to make sure
This is number 9.
that is correct.
And the complainant said, respondent, she didn't want to cancel the service. See,
You hear that
basically,
from the complainant, though, I guess is what I'm wondering.
yes.
Okay.
And then the complainant also, I mean, somebody came by and tried to switch their service,
Right.
but we're not sure who it is. And if we knew who it was, then of course I would recommend to go after that person, but, okay.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, could you tell me who made the motion and did the second, please?
Cockcroft made the motion. Mr. Richard seconded.
Number 10, 2018-071-341. Complainant alleges that her alarm system account was sold to another company that is unlicensed. Respondent states that they are only an alarm services billing company and all accounts are monitored through a properly licensed monitoring service. The monitoring company license was verified. Respondent does not sell, service, monitor, or install any alarm systems. Recommendation is to close.
Motion to concur with council.
Is there an exception in there that they've got access to the customer's information, though? Does that, as a billing company?
The problem with this company is they don't qualify as an alarm system company at all. They're just a billing company.
There is an exclusion in the law for a billing company.
Okay.
I've always wondered, do they really not have access to all those confidential records? But there is the exclusion in there for that. So, I mean, it sounds like they would meet that.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Fraker. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Harvey to concur with council's recommendation to close. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Number 11, 2018-067-761. Complainant alleges respondent purchased her monitoring account from another company and since then has been unable to recognize and service the system, continually trying to sell new equipment and harassing complainant to pay outstanding balances. Complainant has since canceled the contract and with a new company. Respondent confirmed the contract was canceled, however, a fee was inadvertently applied. This fee has been reversed and complainant has no obligation to respondent. Respondent reached out to complainant and states that complainant is satisfied with the resolution. Recommendation is to close.
Make a motion to concur with council.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Harvey, a second by Mr. Fraker to concur with council to close. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Can I ask a question real quick? I know in the past we've put certain types of complaints in categories and said if this is a clear, cut and dry situation in this category, doesn't even have to come before the board. And I wonder if a category like a contract dispute or something like that couldn't be set aside like we've done some other categories in the past where we don't see dozens of that type come and burn our time up. I'm just curious.
So that would be something that the board would have to make a motion and decide on. If you all feel that once legal has assessed the case and we know that it's a contract dispute, that it can be administratively closed, that's something we could do on our end and it wouldn't make it to the legal report.
What do you guys think about that? I mean, we see a lot of those that's just cut and dry that doesn't really need much attention.
Well, and especially when the complainant is happy with the outcome, when the
put that in a new business or new ideas or whatever.
Yes, we can address that further down in the agenda.
Sorry to interrupt.
All right. Number 12, 2018-073-081. Complainant alleges that respondent refuses to release a copy of their contract and the 90-day cancellation policy. Complainant seems to be confused as to why respondent is different from her previous alarm system company. Respondent has spoken with complainant. It seems the confusion started when respondent recently changed their name. Respondent explains that they are the same company with no changes to the original agreement. Complainant confirmed the system is working properly and wants to continue with respondent service. Recommendation is to close.
Make a motion to concur with council.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Fraker, a second by Mr. Harvey to concur with our council's recommendation to close. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Number 13, 2018-080-051. Complainant alleges respondent made a bid to install security cameras in a school, however, they are unlicensed. Respondent provided proof they are properly licensed and states that complainant looked up the wrong name. Recommendation is to close.
They are properly licensed.
They are properly licensed, yes.
Were there similar names, or?
Yes, I can explain that to you a little bit. Whenever we get names that have periods in them, like A period, B period, if they leave the period off when they send it or start looking for it, you cannot find it. Or if it starts with the alarm company, for just using that example,
Right.
most people leave off the. Our system, you have to be very specific in this system. If you got periods or you got spaces, we have to know the exact name. But this company, yes, we did the research and they are licensed.
Know when the bid was made? Because it looks like this company was just recently licensed. Do we have a copy of that?
I can look that up.
What's the date of the complaint?
$11.14.
Imagine they got licensed on 11/13. That's just amazing.
Would that have been when it was completed? I mean, it would have been in process for a lot
Oh,
longer than
it'd
that.
been in process for at least 30 days.
So their application would have been.
Oh, the
before
application
complaint.
was here before they actually got licensed, and yeah, it would have been here before they got the complaint, before
Right,
we
and-
got.
The bid,
Application was here
Application.
before the complaint was received.
the bid was on November 8th, but the application was here and being processed.
It was probably applied for long before that bid was.
Oh, yes, it had to have been for the company and the QA, yes.
Okay.
Because they would have had to go through the background, take the test and everything, so it'd have been a while.
Would it be apparent from, I guess, where they are or who they are that they wouldn't have been doing other business in the state before that, or?
I didn't have any complaints of that nature.
I guess I'm trying to understand if it was a brand-new company that started up, or maybe a company that was out of state that got licensed to do the job, or if there had been unlicensed activity before that.
That up,
They're based in Alamo, Tennessee.
Let me understand, the bid date was 11/8. They're licensed on 11/13.
But the
But the
application
application-
had been in process for some time prior to 11/8.
Probably technically, they shouldn't have been bidding or contracting
I don't think so.
Right.
before they had their license.
What was the date on the application?
I don't have that. Do you have it?
I'm looking it up right now.
All right, just a moment.
It was a school system.
Yes. That's the application in, wow, November the 1st. License on the 13th.
Wow.
Oh, man.
Short turnaround.
Wow.
Was that for a new category, or was that completely?
No, that's for the whole that's for the whole
So
license.
they were not licensed at all before?
No.
They didn't just add CCTV? From the look of their business, do they appear to be doing all security work, or maybe they do data or some other business and added in, decided
looks-
to do cameras, or?
Well, it looks that it's a local person in that county school system to install security cameras in that school system only.
I'm glad they got licensed. I do think we're, it sounds like
They're only licensed in CCTV.
okay. We have so many people that are doing cameras and aren't licensed. It does sound like they kind of got the cart before the horse a little bit, of bidding a job before they were licensed.
Perhaps we can give them a letter of warning or something of that nature other than a close to complaint.
Have a motion? Do we have a motion? We don't have a motion.
No, I'm kind of mixed feelings on it. I'm open to if someone would like to make a motion, but.
I'm going to go with what Ms. Vest stated, that we should send them a letter that says if they're going to continue, if they decide they want to do burglar alarms, fire alarms, whatever, that they need to get properly licensed before seeking work.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Fraker for this company to receive a warning informational letter about proper licensing procedure from the administration. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second by Mr. Cockcroft. All in favor, voice by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The motion carries.
Number 14 is a represent 2018-013-731. This is an anonymous complaint that respondent is advertising selling security systems on a Facebook page. Complainant also alleges respondent is a convicted felon. Respondent's Facebook page shows him advertising sales and installation of self-monitoring systems. Also, respondent recently began advertising a position open for an installer. The recommendation at that time was to authorize formal and send a consent order with a civil penalty in the amount of $1,000 for engaging in unlicensed activity in violation of TCA 62-32-304, subsection A. Board decision was concur. The new information. Respondent states that he only sold hidden cameras that could be installed by the homeowner. Apparently, he had a friend that could get them cheap, and he tried to make a little money by offering at retail prices. He says he did not install any equipment. Respondent admits he tried to find an installer to install other types of cameras, but could not find anyone that was licensed. Respondent also realized he would need to be licensed when offering to sell the cameras. Respondent decided not to continue with that business and has not posted anything on Facebook page since February 2018, which is soon after the complaint was filed. Respondent also says he started a training course in July to become a private investigator. Respondent states after the training course, the company will help him apply for licensure as a PI. The new recommendation is a letter of warning.
Guy that's a convicted felon.
I have not seen anything as to his record.
Right, I'm just kidding.
They have a commission, and that individual, if he had a felony, would go before the commission
I know.
before his license would be granted.
I know, I'm just kidding.
Valid point, though.
Did he pay the $1,000 fine or not?
No, he's sent a new response trying to counter the previous board action.
I like the original decision, but I understand we're supposed to review and look at it, if it's an ongoing thing. Feels like people can do whatever they want, and then when they get caught, they can say, whoops, well, I'm not going to do that anymore.
As he basically admitted he did what he was accused of.
And all we have was the Facebook page or something. There's no other.
His admission.
Well, his admission is that he sold them, that he didn't.
Also tried to find an installer.
Right.
Basically, we have a Facebook page. We have an anonymous complaint. The Facebook page has, since February, he hasn't posted anything about security cameras.
This is the minimum penalty, is it not?
Yes, it is.
When we were instructed on something else, it was a much larger penalty when we were talking about how many people were affected or what it is going forward. I make a motion to stand by our original decision.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Cockcroft to stay with the original board decision. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second by Mr. Fraker. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries to stay with the original decision.
That concludes the legal report.
Thank you very much. Okay, do y'all want to take a break? 15-minute break? Our agenda, since we don't have any appearances, is your administrative report correct?
That's correct. We don't have any appearances this morning, so I'll just go right into my section here on the monthly report. All I had to report for the alarm board is that we're pleased to announce that Scott Cockcroft was reappointed.
Congratulations.
His term will not expire until 2022. Gosh, that sounds a long way. It's not really that far, but it does sound that. We just need to get some more paperwork and we'll be all right as far as that goes. All right. You'll see that we had the monthly meeting with Ashley and I. Well, we talk almost all the time, but we had it down on October the 11th. We will be going back and have monthly meetings with our litigation attorney, Mr. Huffman. We had kind of fell down on a little of those, but I'm required. That's all I had on that portion. If you would, you can go ahead and look at the budget. We'll take a quick look at it, if you have not already. Your ending balance so far is $64,874. I give you the spreadsheet here so you can look at the comparisons and with the historical trends. We're still on, as far as I can see, we're still on schedule. I don't see anything drastic there. Expenditures, revenue, for 17 and for 18. We're about in the same ballpark there. That's all I had on that. As far as legislation, I don't have any legislation to report that I know of. We are pleased to say. Application reviews, we don't have any new applications to review. That's right, they all came through clean this month.
Happy holidays.
Oh, yeah. And from one of those complaints, we're quick too. That was fantastic. I don't have a request for the extension, and we do not have any criminal history reviews. As you know, we have several staff members in our office that do the criminal history reviews, and we are applying all the histories to the Fresh Start Act. So we are approving most of those in-house. Any of the serious ones, of course, you will get those. Oh, that's my agenda. Oh, okay, next thing on there is the education report, and lucky Mr. Scott got everything.
Oh, really?
You sure did. Now
Okay.
oh yeah, that's what, you're correct there. That's what happens when you're good. We do know that ESA, we've already got them approved, and you did make the statement, we know that they're okay. But for the initials, you wanted to see these reports. And so that's why we handed these out and sent them all. Since we're all ESA, we gave them to Scott.
I did look over everything I've got. There's not a lot of information on the course. It's got a name and it does have a certificate with it, but there's just a very brief description of the course. And I'm actually curious what some of the other members think about some of these titles. They really don't pertain directly to our industry. They're all good courses. It's about management and hiring people, and it's things that any business, it would be good for, but if we're requiring people to take classes about our industry, I wouldn't think these would really meet that. I know we've been pretty broad in our approval.
So would you feel more comfortable just approving them for continuing ed instead of initial?
Well, they definitely be continuing ed, but I'm even wondering, does that follow what the intent of the law was to have a lot of training, specific to running a business versus alarm systems, or fire alarm systems, or
Well, a qualifying agent would need to know how to run a business.
But the QA doesn't really have to know how to run the business.
No, it does
He just
not.
has to make sure that they stay within the law.
Right.
So y'all feel like there's still, I guess, can y'all see the titles of all of them? Are y'all looking at them?
That's what I was just curious, how to becoming a charismatic and focused leader. Lead yourself. What does that have to do with the alarm business and knowing what you're doing? Are we doing our jobs properly?
But this one here is going to have, the reason they sent it is they're having their meeting in January next
Right.
year in Austin, Texas. So it doesn't leave me much time to go back and ask for more information. I'll do whatever the board wants me to do.
One of the classes, the only description is lead people. This is the second in behavior application module. Through facilitated peer breakouts, we'll divide into those sections and behaviors the most successful leaders apply. Immediately. It's, what is that, 3 sentences? There's just, I don't have much here to go on to approve it, number one. Number two, I don't see it applying to the.
To me, it doesn't apply to the rank and file. It would be more like for a manager or an owner
Looks like an HR department to me.
Right. They're good courses, and I'm sure I'll probably offend somebody at the ESA, but I just don't see how they pertain to installing an alarm system or a fire alarm or camera system. And I think that's, if we're requiring education, I think that's what it ought to be about. If it was one out of this list of all of these, but an entire slate of nothing but if that doesn't apply to the actual nitty-gritty of the technical part of the business, I don't see.
All right,
Well,
well,
we can just say no. and vote
just
it
say
down.
no. I mean,
I feel comfortable with that.
they're still going to have the seminar, it's just that the individuals won't get credit to be turned into us.
I'm not even sure the people are, they've given resumes, and I don't even think they're from the industry, not that that they have to be, but I think these are just kind of motivational speakers.
I think because it's at the Leadership Summit, that's why. I mean, that's why these courses are focused on management and leadership, so, but I agree.
But the only person that needs continuing ed is the QAs, and the QAs won't be at the Leadership Summit more than likely. So.
Some of it overlap, but. So I would make a motion to not approve these due to content and limited, there's not a synopsis, there's limited information on the course.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Cockcroft to deny these listed courses for continuing education and initial training based on content and description. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second by Mr. Fraker. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Okay. We don't have any, we've got some unfinished businesses
Have
next,
some unfinished business, no.
or new business.
Well, yeah, we'll do the other.
Well,
one.
we've
We'll
got,
just- I know, is that considered unfinished business, that question we asked earlier?
Yeah.
Or when I put it under, all right. We'll go straight to that then. I believe what it was, I believe it was Keith who mentioned complaints being closed administratively for the contract disputes. If we could look at, if the attorney looks at the complaints, and determines that it is without a doubt a contract dispute, that we would be allowed to close it administratively, and it would not come before the board. I believe that's what you were saying, Keith.
Exactly.
as long as all parties are satisfied, because I noticed in several of yours today, it said complainant agreed or complainant is okay with this. I
Right.
wouldn't mind that. But one thing, if this is a repeat pattern of activity, I don't feel real comfortable. You know, if this is complaint after complaint of a similar nature, you know, at some point, does the board need to refer them to the Consumer Affairs or something like that, you know?
I think there's actually a couple questions. Some of these complaints that we get over and over are large companies. So you have more people that will complain, and then a lot of times they do work it out. Of course, you know, those are the type that we close because everything's worked out.
Some of them won't be worked out. Some of them, the complainant won't be happy because it is a contract dispute. So we can't necessarily say only one. I mean, we could. We could say only the ones where the complainant is happy. Those are the easy ones. If both parties are okay, then we can move forward. It would be nice to be able to include some of the others that maybe the complainant's still not happy, but it's very clearly a contract dispute. If it's about how much money somebody owes back and forth, it just doesn't really. There's nothing we can do about it.
Right. And
Nothing to do with us anyway.
And I will say, for some of my other programs, what happens is the centralized complaint department will receive that complaint. They'll send it to me, send that complaint to me, and they will say, it looks like this is a contract dispute, which is not really in the board's jurisdiction because, like we said, it's a civil matter. And then I would suggest go ahead and closing that for that reason, but refer it to Consumer Affairs, and maybe the Consumer Affairs Department can work something out for them.
You already
That's your
do some of that.
recommendation, or is that what you already do?
That is what I do for some of my other programs, but of course, we would need a board decision on something like that for you.
Comfortable with that?
I do too. Our main concern is going to be if we feel like it is something deceptive or ethics, and as far as the rules that we just put into place.
Which is why the centralized complaint department does refer it to me first to look over. Because if I see something that maybe they didn't see because they aren't nuanced in the alarm, I will tell them to go ahead and open the complaint, and it'll go to Stewart for him to investigate.
I feel more comfortable knowing that someone with legal education is looking, well, I mean, versus a clerk and I'm not demeaning that person, but I feel more comfortable deferring to you to make that decision because you're both attorneys and yes, it is a criminal or this is civil or whatever. You're more qualified to make that decision than I think any of us are, so I feel comfortable with it.
I think I can't remember an occasion where we differed on something that was a contract matter that you said your recommendation was to.
I just think we've had a couple of questions at time, but we didn't vote against you. We just asked for more information. But
My only concern is to make sure, on like a couple of these today, the respondent was saying they had contacted the complainant and that they were satisfied. I don't necessarily want to take the respondent's word for it that the complainant is satisfied, but.
Well, do y'all do a follow-up if you know who the complainant is?
Of course, we'll do a follow-up on the complainant, and they'll say, yes, I've talked to them, or the respondent will include something.
Correspondence from them.
The correspondence with the complainant, and that's a lot of times we get correspondence with the complainant, so we don't have to call them, but.
Right.
I guess we need a motion to. We need a motion to defer these situations to Ashley or Stewart for review.
I would make a motion that anytime the staff runs across a complaint that is in the nature of contract dispute and it's a clear-cut, dry case, that they could close that administratively and not have to bring it before the board.
Second.
We have the motion by Mr. Harvey to allow our legal to handle civil contract disputes, things of that nature, instead of bringing it before the board. And we have a second by Mr. Cockcroft. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's carried. Thank you for taking on more work.
All right, that was under unfinished business. If you would now move to new business. This is just a little different. We do get questions in the office all the time about I want to install my own system. I'm pastor so and so. I'm putting it in the church. I'm doing this. But I want to just show the alarm board what was sent to us by an individual, and I'll read it for the record here. It's just a friendly reminder to my Tennessee church friends. The state of Tennessee says that a church cannot install its own cameras systems. Violation of state law. Then it says edited. I have been licensed for over 20 years and I'm not the one that is making the law, and I'm trying to give a friendly reminder that if you violate the law, that is not wise as the church. I don't know where this came from. I don't know what started this, but I thought we would try to go on record. What is the decision of the board if the church is a proprietary, would it not be? I mean, if they went and bought their own system from wherever in a box and went to church and there's somebody in their church puts it up, do they have to be licensed? Well, if somebody called me, I'd tell them no.
Didn't have to be licensed?
That they did not have to be, because that's proprietary.
Yeah, the parishioner of the church, it did that.
Yeah. Especially if they did it for free.
Well, that's pretty key, number one.
Right.
It's not only especially, it's, if there's any charge, if somebody's getting paid, then,
Right.
then that's,
But it's for somebody from the church system.
when it's
I would
volunteers in the church, I mean, I think it's kind of a borderline. I don't have a problem considering a church a company as far as that, where they define that a company can install their own system or equipment. But the issue, and I don't necessarily agree with it, it's another one of those cases where I don't think it matters whether a licensed person's installing cameras or not in the church, if it's their own people, their own system. But the law says if it's open to the public, which most churches are, I would think, most are fairly open and inviting, then the law says that it's a violation.
We might be on little skating on thin ice here. Are you suggesting I would tell the church you have to become an alarm contracting company?
No, they just need to hire
Oh,
somebody.
they have to have a licensed installer, is what he's saying, because it's public access.
I mean, they can't have they can't have a member of the church install electrical wiring either. It's not to say they don't do that sometimes, but from a legal standpoint, you're supposed to hire an electrician, you're supposed to hire a plumber for all of these sorts of things. That's what we've decided as a society, that we license all these things.
The question I guess I have is the statement that this individual wrote true?
Yes.
I mean, this is going out
Yes,
to
that's the
a
true
lot of
statement.
people.
I wrestled with this with my own church, which they wanted some volunteers in the church to put in cameras. I just volunteered. We did it. My company installed the cameras, but technically, someone in the church should not have installed them. So, but that they wanted to do that, so I just volunteered to install them. Our company installed them for them, but technically, the members of the church shouldn't.
Well, this is kind of a mean statement that a church cannot install its own camera equipment, but they don't go forward to say because it has public access to it. It's not that churches are being singled out for more severe legislation than any other place. It's the fact that it's a public access.
Got that. So is the school system, and you're going to have more and more that's coming before the board.
Right.
It's just more of it that's happening now. So it's kind of hard, a little difficult to tell, Davidson County school system, they got to become an alarm system contractors board, or else, licensed, or else they have to hire somebody, is what we're saying.
Well,
If they go out and hire somebody, that's fine.
All right.
That person they're hiring would be licensed, and all their individuals.
I'm wondering if these places are thinking about the liability that you have.
That's right.
Someone who's untrained come in, and I'll use the example of the church. You put CCTV in, and you're not licensed to do that, and then a child, for example, is raped in the men's restroom or the women's restroom, then the parents come back and look at the church and say, well, you put, because they're adding that liability that they're providing extra protection when they put that CCTV system in, and it doesn't work properly or doesn't function, then does the liability come back on the uninstalled or unlicensed installer or against the church? I mean, to me, it would be a non-issue for me. I wouldn't have unlicensed activity when it comes to personal safety of installing fire, burglar alarm, or cameras anywhere the public's got access. Because once you cross that line and you put those cameras in there, you're better off not to have them than to have them and have yourself in a liability.
I understand that, but for instance, my church, since I work with this, and they're going, well, can't you go down here to Lowe's and buy this box and bring it in here and put it up? I mean,
And there's a lot of stuff Lowe's sells that you can't legally, the whole electrical department, they're selling a lot of stuff, but legally, you can't go to Lowe's and buy up a breaker box and receptacles and Romex and go.
sure can.
Legally, you can't. You can legally buy the stuff, but you can't install it in your own house without, being properly licensed and having to pull an electrical permit. I can't do that. I can't do that in my own house.
You can't even build your own house
Right.
without using a licensed electrician.
Would you have an issue if a school system called and said that I want somebody unlicensed to put a fire alarm in, would you have a problem
But they
telling
don't
them?
exactly word it that way now.
Well,
I mean, first of all, I'd end that conversation
You-
real quick.
right, well, you were saying
They
you
said
have,
that.
you would have a problem, you wouldn't like telling them that they had to
No,
have somebody
I mean-
licensed to do cameras, but it's the same thing as a fire alarm system.
No,
mean,
I'm just asking, when I get their call, do I tell them you either A, hire somebody
Right,
to do it who is a licensed alarm contractor,
right.
or the church becomes a contractor, alarm contracting company?
Which is not feasible, but yes, if it was a
Oh,
huge
right, I
church
mean-
and they wanted to, I guess they could do
I
that.
don't think I would go so far as to tell the church they need to become a licensed
But that's, well, they're
contractor.
going to want to put their own in and have their own people
But
put
I
it in.
think, you
and-
know, once you explain to them, you just need to use a licensed installer. But if you use a lay person to do that, then you have to understand the liability's coming back on you wholly by making that decision.
And they can buy the cameras wherever. They can buy them
Yeah.
at a discount store or a big box store, whatever. It's just that when they go to install them, they need a license.
Big parts, there's no way we're going to be able to enforce anything about
Right.
it. It's just,
They're asking
If
a
something
question.
happens, and then, yeah, it's still going to be.
it's still, yeah.
I mean, it's going to be greater than us when civil suits are
It's
filed.
going to come before us. That's
Huh?
for sure. No, that kind of suit won't come before us.
No, it
We don't have
wouldn't
to
come
deal with
above
that.
us, but I'm just saying it's going to
gonna
be
be a big
greater
one.
than anything
Yeah.
we do. When something does happen and the camera system doesn't capture it or fails or whatever, and the civil suits start flying, of course, we're going to be out of the line
I'll tell
of
you what,
fire, but-
when I get these telephone calls, all I do is open up the book and start reading to you. If you fall in to any of A, B, C, or D, whatever it is, then you have to have a license. Other than that, if you don't believe what I'm telling you, or you think you're outside of that, you need to come before the board and let them make the decision.
And I think that's the safest answer you can give them is read verbatim from the state law, the rules, regulations, whatever.
Do you have the code, the like 6232, whatever, as far as, doesn't it cover proprietary or, I mean, I couldn't find,
Didn't know, see where proprietary was in there.
I'm wanting to say
See-
proprietary is exempt.
right, proprietary is exempt, but it does go on to say if, as long as it's not open to the public.
Because in my past careers, I worked for a company that we didn't have to have a license. Because I was working for the company, it was open to the public.
Might not have been enforced, but
Yeah, of course, that was back in the early 80s.
Well, yeah,
We-
that's,
I believe.
I think what you're talking about, Scott, it says these persons are specifically excluded from requirements of this part, and then subpart 9 says individual property owners personally installing an alarm system within the owner's own residence or other building not open to the general public.
that's about the individual.
Right. And I think when Cody and I discussed it, of course, the church is a building, so we were assuming that a parishioner would be the one that's doing the install, so we figured that would be as close as we could come to that,
Right.
thinking individually, but we had the same reservation about the being open to the general public.
What do you do about a store owner who puts up his own stuff that's open to a public? You know, he goes to the big box store and buys a.
but it's not legal if it's accessible by the public.
I know it's not legal, but
Does it happen? I'm sure, yes.
oh yeah,
Does
you know it does.
But if someone's asking us our
Right.
opinion on it, and my interpretation, when we're giving our, interpretation of what the statute is, and my interpretation is that it's not they can't do it, that it's not
Right.
legal for them to do it. I'm sure people do install them anyway. I mean, but what do we do about that? Somebody's got to turn them in. And This guy's at least he's letting them know ahead of time, because I'm sure he'd be the very one that would file a complaint against them if they install them and they aren't licensed. I'm sure probably it looked like that was a Facebook comment or something. and
Right, yeah.
It was just a screen copy, but it had 44 responses. I'm sure there was a lot of heated debate going back and forth, and maybe it's his own church, but
All right, I'm going to make a comment to what you just said about changing the law. I believe this law was written in the 80s, and I believe I discussed this before. It may be time for us to sit down and take another look at it. Times have changed. Technology has been changing. You can do so much on your own phone right now, and that you couldn't do back in the 80s.
We're not in disagreement with you, but it's the legislature that's going to have to initiate any change in the law.
if we're overseeing companies that are licensed to do this work, and they're paying all their fees, they're paying all their costs, they're doing all their training, it's not fair to them for us to say, oh, these people, we've got new technology. We need to either eliminate the CCTV altogether, or we've got to continue to enforce what's on the books. But it's not fair to the companies that are licensed and are abiding by it.
Well, maybe that's the conversation we need to have then.
I personally would be for getting rid of the CCTV licensing part, but if we're not going to police it heavier than it is, I know there's tons of people installing. There's data companies, phone companies, do-it-yourself guys. There's Joe's handyman service, all these different things, and a lot of times a complaint gets turned in, and they say, "Well, I won't do it in the future," and I'm sorry, and maybe they just don't advertise on Facebook, but I think a lot of it still goes on. I think that's fair to the licensed contractors.
But I do believe we probably need to take some time to sit down and review everything.
Do we make recommendations to the
Right.
legislature
We
as far
can,
as what
right.
we would like to see changed?
Yes, we can always prepare it and send it up to the commissioner and talk with the assistant commissioner, whomever, and see if she'll put it in the packet. Department would be behind it when it moves up. But a lot of it would be someone trying to find someone on the Hill that would work with it. I'm just saying, some of these laws that we have on the books are we wrote them in the 70s and the 80s, and technology has changed.
Some of the technology on camera systems has changed, but most of what's changed about camera systems is the cost of the equipment has come down drastically. So it's more available. There's a lot better quality, but installing a system, maybe everybody used to use coax and now it's Cat5 cable, but there's still installation. The part that was originally licensed hasn't changed drastically since the 80s. And I'm old enough, I was in it back then too. So.
All right, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So we do try to look at things and what might need to be changed, but I would like for us to think about it. Perhaps we can discuss it again at another meeting about perhaps eliminating CCTV. Or if that's the direction to go in, I don't know. I'll have to leave it up to the board.
I personally don't know that I want to see us do away with it, because we've had to deal with that where companies are specifically targeting consumers with cameras, inferior, unlicensed, but like something for future.
I agree with Doug. I think maybe there should be some amendments or some changes, but I wouldn't want to see the licensing requirement taken away altogether.
Perhaps we can address that at another time then. I appreciate that. Thank you. If you want to go to the next new business, it is an article about the Memphis false alarm law.
Do we need to address anything on that last one as far as give them a response?
Oh, I was just bringing that to your attention.
Okay.
That's something out there that was out there. I do get telephone calls about churches. I get them about the schools. Like I said, I just read what's in the statute, and then they don't believe they fall into that, they need to come before the board.
Because someone was asking a question there that they've attached an image want to know if this is accurate.
It was, but that was the statement that I believe where the
That's my opinion.
statement.
We hadn't voted or anything.
No,
on it,
I don't think I needed to vote on that.
Okay.
It's just information. I'll let you know what was. Okay, how about take a look at the next one? We do have it in our statute about the false alarms, two-time call. Apparently, what Shelby County, Memphis is doing is charging an excessive amount. They're calling it a recovery fee. It does state in there, like you said, it's $50. They're going up from 90 to 250 for the false alarms. Municipalities, how do you pronounce that? Yeah.
I believe the maximum fine right now is $50, and they still are charging a $50 fine, but they're going to what they're calling a cost of service. They're saying that it costs them $90 to roll a car, but they're not charging cost of service for domestic disputes or auto accidents or anything else. It does seem as though they're trying to do something to circumvent the law.
Well, what are we going to do about it?
But what ability do we have to do about it?
Our law is supposed to be a little bit stronger than Shelby County.
Right.
So,
I guess I'm asking council, do we have the ability to?
could we at least write him a letter and say, hey, we know.
I mean, we can send a letter to we can definitely send a letter regarding what the statute requires, just to figure out, because I think the way they're trying to get around it, like you said, is calling it a recovery fee. It's not necessarily a penalty for a false alarm. So there would have to be some conversation as to what that recovery fee actually is, how that differs from what the board has determined false alarm fee. So yes, we can send that letter and try to start that conversation.
It's just the city of Memphis. It's not Shelby County. There is a joint board, but it's only the city of Memphis that's doing this at the time.
I can send that letter and we can try to get some conversation going to figure out if there's something that needs to be done by the board, or if there's anything to be done by the board in regards to these fees that they are charging.
For the record, the article touts a 20% reduction in false alarms. A fine is not doing that, you know as well as I do. But this is, Memphis has problems. We know that. And saying that they can skirt the state law, that's the issue. As you know as well as I do, just up in the fine doesn't reduce false alarms.
I think that's where we'll leave it then. If it's all right, we don't need a vote on that. We'll ask the legal staff if they'd write a letter and just let's find out really what's going on, or say, hey, let's a dialogue here so we can know what we're doing.
What does the statute say in reference to that? As far as does it say it as a fine or any other charges or?
So the part that was referenced in the initial letter refers to 6232-321, subpart E. That says nothing in this part shall be construed to prohibit counties or municipalities from enacting and imposing penalties for false alarms, provided that the penalty shall not exceed, and my version says $25 for each false alarm. I think you all just said 50. I don't know if
it was increased to 50 at some point. That was, I believe, at some of their request. So your opinion is you'll send a letter stating that they're exceeding that at this point? Of course, they may still say that that's
But
not
then
a
at that
fine,
point,
but
we kind of know if they are purposely circumventing the law and saying this recovery fee. This may be, a bigger discussion than just me and Cody, but at least the letter will kind of get that conversation started.
That's all I have, Madam Chair.
I don't have the 321 on the updated one, so I assume it is $50 then.
they referenced it in the letter there, but I'm sure it's 50. It was increased a number of years ago.
Any more issues to be brought forth today?
One more note on this.
Okay, go ahead.
And for the other board members, once I got this email, it was sent to me personally. I did drop out of the conversation. I told them I will
Recuse yourself.
that's the word, recuse myself, because I figured it would come before us. So I haven't seen any of this past that one letter that I forwarded to Cody.
Well, we appreciate that, too. Okay.
More business. This meeting is adjourned, and we'll see you back in February.
Yes. Everybody have a Merry Christmas.